Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your unfiltered fit BFF. Mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host. And full disclosure, if this podcast sounds a bit different, it's because I am recording this from my hotel room in New York City. And I was actually just going to record on my podcast whenever I got back home. I had some topics that I want to talk about, but there have been so many cool things that happened during my stay here that really made me reflect. And I came here by myself, which is something that I really enjoy doing from time to time, going somewhere on my own where I have time to be on my own thoughts and analyze different situations and, process when I'm not, having to do a million things at the same time. Like when I'm home that I have to be mom, I have to be wife, I'm working, I'm doing all the things. And today, what I want to talk about, and before you freak out, don't freak out, because I'm going to be talking about what today's conversation is going to be about. Don't freak out. Full disclosure, don't freak out. You're going to understand what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But today we're going to be talking about what politics and fat loss have in common. Today, election was just announced, and this is not going to be political, no party affiliation. You likely never hear me speak about political affiliation to anybody, which you're going to understand why as I start to go over what I believe that politics and fat loss have in common. What kind of got me thinking about having this conversation in the podcast was that, so whenever I arrived here in New York, I had booked this hotel and I arrived in the hotel, and I'm going to tell you right now, I'm a bit of a diva whenever it comes to where I sleep. I need to sleep well. I need to be in a hotel that is decent, at least. Like, I'm not the hostel kind of person. Camping, I'm not going. Anyway, I digress. So I arrived in the hotel and it's, it was already the evening. The New York Marathon was happening. So it took forever to get to the hotel. So I get to the hotel and I'm like, fuck, this ain't it, man. But I was like, okay, just arrived, calm down. And I get into the room, terrible. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to stay here for the duration of my stay. I know myself. But I was like, let's give it a try. And the next day, I literally wake up with my bed was shaking. And I'm like, what is happening? And I put my head outside and there is literally this huge construction. They're digging in the building right next door, like they had demolished, and then they're digging and the drills are so deep that the whole building that I'm in is shaking at 7:15 in the morning. Granted, I was going to wake up early anyway, because I like to wake up early when I'm traveling to get my workout done and do what I have to do. But I was going to spend most of my day working in my hotel room. And I'm like, there is no way that my brain cells are going to work with all of this happening. So this was kind of like the first lesson that is going to make sense. Stay with me here. A lot of people will just be like, the hotel sucks. It is what it is. And, have that almost victim mentality around what has happened to them and accept and be miserable for the duration of their stay for the whole time and just be like, it is what it is. There's construction. There is nothing they can do about it. And true, there is nothing that the hotel can do about it, but there is something that I can do about it. And that's really where the topic today about agency comes into play. Obviously, I can't control the construction. I can't control the shady hotel, the smell of mold. I can't. But what I can control is what I do in order to change my circumstances. So I went to the front desk and I was like, hey, listen. And the guy was incredibly understanding. I have had moments of Karen, and that was not one of them. And the guy was completely understanding. He was like, no, I totally get it. It was so loud that I could hardly hear the guy at the front desk. So I spoke with him and he was like, Miss Melo, there is really no room that I can put you that is not going to be as loud as the one that you're at. Because as you can see, even here in the reception is very loud. I'll be more than happy to refund your money and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, thank you so much. And everything was as smooth as it could have been. And then I changed hotels, love the hotel that I'm in now. And the rest of my stay was incredible. And the lesson here is about agency, about advocating for yourself, about, not just accepting something that is outside your control and being like, see, that's it. It looks like I'm going to have just a bunch of bad nights sleep because that's what happened. You have control on advocating for yourself, and which then piggybacks into what politics and fat loss have in common. Because on my way here, I was listening to an interview with a Harvard professor, Arthur Brooks. He's the happiness professor. The guy is brilliant, and I love how he's like very straightforward. And he said a couple of things on this interview that I was listening that got me thinking. He said something, activism complex doesn't want you to feel agency. And another quote that he said was, bring people together on their shared sense of victimization. And that's one thing that I see a lot whenever we are talking about the activism complex around not taking care of your health. And we have the whole messaging that is like, love yourself as is. And then there is this victim mentality, almost like it's completely outside of our control because I have PCOS or because I have X, Y, and Z. And all these people with the same outrage come together and keep on telling each other about how much of a victim they are instead of taking ownership on the part of the deal that they can take control over. And how does this all come together whenever it comes to, the analogy that I made about how politics and fat loss, they have a lot of things in common. So I came to New York City to do an interview for iHeartRadio, which is huge, like huge. And I got invited because Zen, who is the host of the radio show, found me on social media and liked what I was saying. I can't help but to think about when I moved to the US 20 years ago and I had nothing. If you haven't listened to the podcast, it's one of the first ones. I can link in the show notes, but moved here with $350 to my name, worked shifts, cleaning restaurants, to earn what I can't even remember, like $30 to work the whole night. And I kept on telling myself, just keep on going. Control what you can, let go of what you cannot. And that was almost like my motto, not exactly with these words, but I just knew deep down that I couldn't control my environment. The cockroaches were going to be there, but I could control how I reacted, responded to it, and do something that was within my control to change my circumstances. And in that specific scenario was to work. And being in the US for 20 years and going from moving here with $350 to then eventually winning the Olympia, which is the biggest bodybuilding competition in the world, doing seminars in 30 plus countries, being featured in magazines, and now doing interviews for big radio stations that have a reach that is bigger than I can even imagine. It's quite surreal. And none of this came to be by relying on outside forces in the sense of like, oh, because whoever is in the White House is going to change what my life looks like. So now is where we're going to get into where the crossroads of what I think politics and fat loss have in common. I find that a lot of people put all their tokens on the expectations of what somebody who is in the White House is going to be doing for them, which is absolutely unrealistic because you cannot control that. And while you're putting all your chips on whoever is in the White House, it's easy to blame. Like if something doesn't work out your way with work and whatever it is, oh, but it's because of the economy. But then whenever you objectively look at that person's house, in what I mean, their own house, I mean their behaviors, their attitude, their level of gratitude, their resilience, their discipline to show up to do the work. Whenever you look at that, that is not happening. And then they keep on blaming outside forces, be that whoever is in the White House, whoever is the politician that got elected. They're always blaming that outside force instead of taking accountability and agency over what they can do. Can a president or the politician around you change how easier or harder it is to accomplish X, Y, and Z? Possibly. But ultimately, even if you have the best president or the best whatever it is, and you're not putting in the work and you're not showing up and you're not taking agency over the things that you can do, you're still not going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And that is very much like fat loss. You know, it's much easier to put the responsibility towards change in someone outside of yourself. Oh, it's because my husband is always ordering pizza. All right. But do you have to eat the pizza? It is a choice. Oh, because my kids have all these sporting activities and, you know, life is busy and work is busy and I'm working X amount of hours every single day. Does this make it harder? 100%. It makes it harder, but it doesn't make it impossible. And it's kind of like where the parallels of politics and I think fat loss come together is like that bigger picture, like whoever is in the White House or like your environment, your work, all of that. It can have influence on how your life is, but these are things that you cannot control. So why are we always focusing on the thing that is fully outside of our control instead of having an objective look at ourselves and taking agency and ownership on the variables that we can control? You know, even when I think about being invited to be in this radio show for iHeartRadio, I don't have agency over if somebody is going to see my content and if they're going to like it. What I can do is something that is well within my control, which is to show up repeatedly, day in and day out as myself and do the best that I can with what I have. I don't have millions of followers. I could have like a much bigger platform if I was willing to speak about more outrageous stuff. I'm cool with not being absolutely outrageous in order to accomplish that, but I am showing up. I'm doing what I can. And what happens with that information and who sees it is outside my control. But then whenever the opportunity arises, you take advantage of it and take agency of what you can control. You take agency over, in the example that I'm using, of the content that I'm putting out, of the truth that I am speaking. They're very real to me and what I see day in and day out with the ladies that I work with. And the message is going to resonate with somebody who is aligned. But I'm taking agency of what is under my control, which is to show up day in and day out, even if not many people see it. But it just takes one person to see it. And in the context of fat loss or fitness results, there are many days that you're going to show up repeatedly, consistently. And maybe the scale doesn't move. Maybe, you know, the clothes don't fit looser like you would like to. But you keep on showing up because eventually, if you're doing the work consistently, you are going to get the results. If you're doing the work with integrity, meaning like you're not looking for quick fixes, you're not looking for shortcuts. Much like in life, you have to build that foundation. So still the analogy of politics and fat loss, how are you changing your habits? Because regardless of who is out there, regardless of who is your boss, regardless of who is in the White House, regardless of who your husband is working for, what sports your kids do, how are you changing your habits to accomplish and to take agency over what is within your control to accomplish what you can accomplish or to accomplish what you want to accomplish instead of just having that defeated mindset and being like, yep, that's it. That's it. Life sucks. And, you know, this person is president or like this person became my boss. And you know what I'm saying? Can have a certain boss make things a bit more difficult? Yes. Can having a partner that is maybe not as supportive of your fitness journey make it a bit more challenging? 100%. But it is still within your control to change your habits and how you look at the circumstances. Maybe results will not come as quick as you'd like them to, but they will come if you keep on showing up day in and day out. So the other question that I want to ask is like, how are you working on yourself to become better? And this applies in all areas of life. How are you working on yourself to get a better job? How are you working on yourself to get results, to be able to put some time aside for yourself? How are you working on yourself to take care of yourself? Because I find that so many people lack clarity of where they want to go in life. I find that a lot of people have clarity on their careers, but not so much whenever it comes to themselves and their fitness goals and what success looks like for them. So they struggle with setting boundaries so they can take ownership of their actions. Because one thing that is important to remind ourselves is that every yes that you say is a no that you're saying to something else. And how does this apply to your fat loss journey? This is something that I tell the members of the Powerhouse Academy all the time. If you do not have clarity on your non-negotiables, on the things that you are going to work on yourself, rain or shine, and you take ownership of that. For example, my non-negotiables. I am absolutely going to work at least 3 times a week for 30 minutes a day. And the cousin of the best friend of your high school's sister's cousin is having a holiday party, and then they invite you, but you have zero clarity on what your non-negotiables are. You're going to start saying yes to everything, which without even realizing it is a no that you're saying to at least one of those workout days that you had committed to yourself. But if you do not have clarity on those non-negotiables in what success looks like for you, you're going to spread yourself thin and say yes to everything because you have no clarity on what is on the other side of that yes, what is costing you. And as women, we tend to be more like people pleaser. We want to be everything for everyone. And that always comes at the cost of ourselves. Again, going back, like regardless who the boss is, regardless who the president is, regardless of who your spouse is, how are you working on yourself to set stronger boundaries, to become better, to gain clarity on what you want to accomplish? Because only you can do this. Because the moment that you do not have clarity on your goals, you start to live through somebody else's goals, and then you feel unfulfilled. And then you're just going with the flow and adrift. And it's a pretty awful existence, if I'm like quite honest. I lived like when I was younger and I didn't have like a lot of clarity on what I wanted to do with my life. It is a pretty terrible existence when you have no clarity of where you are, where you want to be, where you want to accomplish. You're just like floating. I hate it. And then the other thing that I find that there is an overlap about fat loss and politics is that everyone expects you to have an opinion or feel outrage about something. You know, I remember whenever semaglutide came out, I didn't know much about it. And I had a lot of people sending me messages on my social media. Hey, Nathalia, can you talk about semaglutide, Ozempic, blah, blah. And this was a few years ago. And I'm like, I can't at that time because I didn't know enough to have an opinion. And then I would see a lot of like the fitness professionals being outraged about semaglutide and being like, oh, you need to be outraged too. And I'm like, one, I'm not going to be outraged about something that I truly don't understand. I'm not going to be outraged over something that is helping people. And I am not going to have an opinion and feel outraged just because everybody else is doing it. And in the context of like fat loss also, it's like you always have to feel outraged about some chemicals on the food, about the next diet. And you need to keep on following the fads and have an opinion about the fads instead of having an inward look and analyzing this is what my life looks like. This is what is realistic for the life that I have right now. What can I do with it? Because only you can have an opinion about you and your reality. And so many times we're searching for that opinion on outside things instead of using that energy to have an opinion on what we can do right now to change our circumstances and our lives, regardless of what is going on like outside. Even in the context of politics, I have people messaging, so what do you think about the elections? Like, are you not outraged about X, Y, and Z? I don't talk about it. I'm not a geopolitic expert. It's just not my wheelhouse. So I'm not going to be putting content and stuff out there with outrage just because everybody expects me to have an opinion about something that I'm not an expert about. Do you want me to have an opinion about coaching and being a mom and staying in shape and being busy and working ridiculous amount of hours and how to make that better and how to stop with the victim mentality and using your kids as a scapegoat to not accomplish your fitness goals? Oh, I can talk about this all day. Why? Because that's something that I truly have an opinion. I am an expert on and I know how to talk about it. Everything else? Nope, absolutely not. And it's very similar to whenever people come to me and they're like, what is the name of the diet that you follow? Why does everything have to have a name? And then you're outraged about this diet today and then you're not outraged about this diet tomorrow. Not everything needs to be an outrage. Not everything needs to be black and white. And that's the thing I think that whenever it comes to fat loss in politics, that there is so much in common is that in politics, you always have that all or nothing mentality. You're either completely this way or you're either completely that way. And with fat loss, like you're either completely cutting out carbs and eating lettuce and ice cubes and cutting out sugar and cutting out alcohol and being miserable, or you are having cake for breakfast, ice cream for lunch, and getting white girl wasted. And the pendulum is always swinging in such extremes. Why can we not like meet somewhere in the middle and be like, okay, realistically speaking, looking at my life, what is something that I can consistently stick to? What is something that I can honor day in and day out, even if the results don't come as quickly? But this need for very like dichotomous opinions is not serving anybody, because the truth is that the truth is going always to be somewhere in the middle. But we are a society that always like, it's kind of like, oh, carbs are bad for me. Right. Oh, because whenever I cut out carbs, I feel so much better. I'm like, right. Because whenever you are eating carbs, you are like just literally eating every carb that you possibly see. You eat the whole freaking bakery. So yes. Oh, because dairy is bad. Well, is it though? And this is a kind of not an intentional experiment, but somewhat of something that happened to me. You know, I normally have like one Blue Bunny ice cream every single night. Delicious. And then one day, like I was just mindless eating. And this was not even like legitimately like binging you. I was just watching TV and I start eating and I didn't realize how much I was eating. And I had quite a lot more ice cream than I normally would have, because we ran out of the cones and the cone kind of like gives me the portion and then I call it a day. But I was having regular ice cream and I didn't have the cone to portion it out for me. And the next day I felt like absolutely garbage because it was a lot more dairy than my body can handle. Does it mean that dairy is the absolute fucking devil for me? No, it just means that I overdid it. So I could go out there and be like, oh yeah, dairy is terrible. I'm never going to have dairy again. I have dairy every single day when I have my freaking little ice cream cone and I'm fine. The problem this time is not that dairy is terrible, is that I just had too much of it. So looking for the truth somewhere in the middle in everything is a skill that I find that we're lacking. And that is something that we have to bring back whenever it comes to our fat loss journey and fitness goals journey, because what is keeping a lot of people stuck are those extreme views one way or the other. So a little recap of the 4 points that I believe that politics is much like fat loss. 1, it's easier to put the responsibility towards change in something outside of yourself. Number 2, A question that you have to ask for yourself: how are you changing your own habits, regardless of what is going on outside of yourself? How are you changing your habits? Number 3, another question: how are you working on yourself to become better? What are the things that you're actively doing and analyzing within yourself to get a better job, to get better results, to progress in life, to have a better relationship with your spouse? Because it's very easy to be like, my husband sucks. Well, maybe he does suck, but are you being effective in communication? Are you voicing your needs? And then the next one is that everyone expects you to have an opinion and feel outrage about something, because we are living in such a dichotomous kind of society that is one extreme or the other, when the truth is that the reality and the solution is right there somewhere in the middle. So you do not have to have those extreme views to get results, to get success, because the key to success is going to be somewhere there in the middle, in a way that is going to be aligned with your life and your routine and your priorities. And your priorities are going to be different from my priorities. They're going to be different from the priorities from my next door neighbor. So understanding that is crucial to get long-term results and to be successful with your fitness journey. That's it for today, guys. And I'm sorry if this mic made it sound like I'm inside a can, but I really had these amazing notes. Like I was walking around the city with pen and paper and my phone and taking notes, because when I walk, it's funny. I'm not a big fan of walking around, but New York City is such a fun place to walk around because you see so much, and listening to podcasts as I'm walking around, it really gave me a lot of food for thought. And I had like a little pen and pencil. I like to write with pencil. I find that pens are too committal. So I like to write with pencil and taking notes on my phone. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And again, I'm sorry if the sound is not great, but I really think that what I had to share today was valuable. And I hope you enjoyed. Let me know by tagging me on social media, primarily Instagram. It's my main platform. Leave a review on your platform of choice that you listen to. Apple Podcasts allows you to leave an actual review. So I would love for you to do that. That's your way of paying me back for the information that you get, the value. That's how you tell me that you're getting a lot of value from the information that I share here with you. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.